Fallen Angels. This is a story about the day we stopped being alone in the universe, or perhaps the day we realized we never were. My name is Dr. Anaya Das, and I was the first to hear them. The night above Pune was still and heavy, as if the sky itself were holding its breath. Inside the National Observatory, only one light remained on. The faint glow of a computer monitor flickered across my tired face. I was 34, brilliant, and cursed with the kind of curiosity that murders sleep. My colleagues called it ambition. I called it hunger. The ache to find something that made existence make sense. That night, my coffee had gone cold hours ago. For hours, I'd been scanning through the background noise of space, static, radiation, the endless hum of the universe. Then, at 2:17 a.m., a strange pulse appeared on my screen. Sharp. Intentional. I leaned closer. The signal wasn't like anything I'd seen before. It came in short bursts, 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. And it didn't fade. I amplified the data. The noise disappeared. What remained was structure, a pattern. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, prime numbers, and then a final sequence that repeated at the end of every cycle, 2027. My heart began to race. I ran the test again and again until the numbers imprinted themselves behind my eyes. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone or something had written it. I recorded my findings, fingers trembling as I typed. The rational part of my brain whispered, "It's a coincidence." The other part, the one that still remembered my grandmother's prayers and the smell of temple incense, whispered something far older. "It's a message." By morning, the signal had been confirmed by observatories in Chile, Japan, and California. Different hemispheres, same frequency, same numbers, and always that haunting, final mark, 2027. The world reacted like it always does, half awe, half panic. Headlines screamed, "Proof of extraterrestrial contact." Social media turned my name into a symbol. And when the United Nations called, I went. Not because I trusted them, but because I wanted to see if anyone else had looked into the abyss and felt it stare back. Geneva was cold. Inside the conference hall, the air smelled of old paper and expensive fear. I stood before a wall of faces, scientists, politicians, skeptics, and I presented my findings. My voice was calm, but my pulse thundered in my ears. The structure of this transmission follows mathematical laws too precise to be random. It isn't a natural signal. It's communication. Someone or something out there is trying to talk to us. When I finished, silence filled the room. Then came the laughter. Soft, polite. The sound of arrogance wearing civility as armor. A delegate muttered, "We've heard this before." Another smiled and whispered, "She wants to be the next Carl Sagan." I stood quietly, letting their condescension hang in the air. Then I gathered my papers, nodded once, and left. Outside, snow drifted through the gray light of evening. My breath fogged the window as I whispered to myself, "If you're out there, I'm listening." Back at my hotel that night, I connected to the live feed from the observatory in Pune. The signal was still active. Constant, rhythmic, steady as a heartbeat. But something about it had changed. It was closer, more focused. I turned up the volume. The room filled with static. My pulse synchronized to it. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. And then, buried deep within the noise, came a sound that froze my blood. A whisper. Low. Measured. Familiar. "We remember." The words weren't spoken in any human tongue, but my mind understood them perfectly. It was as if the meaning had bypassed language altogether. My reflection in the laptop screen stared back at me, wide-eyed, lips trembling. For a moment, I thought I saw another reflection beside mine. A shadow, faint and still. When I blinked, it was gone. I sat motionless for a long time, the whisper still echoing inside my skull. Was it imagination? An artifact of exhaustion? Or had someone finally answered? I wrote in my notebook, "They're not sending a message. They're sending a memory. And it remembers us." Outside, the snow had stopped. The night sky over the Alps was painfully clear, the stars sharp as glass. When I looked up, one of them pulsed, faintly, rhythmically, as if it were breathing. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I had discovered the universe or if the universe had discovered me. 3 months passed. By then, I had become something between a hero and a heretic. Every major outlet wanted my face, my voice, my version of the truth, but inside, I felt only static. The same pulsing rhythm that had taken root in my mind, 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. It never stopped. The Indian government had transferred me to an isolated desert base on Egyptian soil. Neutral ground, they said, for an international effort called the Echo Project. Its goal: to amplify the signal and establish clear communication. But I sensed something deeper. This wasn't exploration anymore. It was worship. The base rose out of the Sahara like a scar of glass and metal. Hundreds of antennas pointed toward the heavens, blinking red in the night like mechanical prayers. I spent my days buried in data and my nights listening to that cosmic heartbeat that refused to let me rest. One evening, as a storm of sand approached the horizon, a guard interrupted my work. "There's a visitor. No clearance, but he insists it's urgent." Outside, the wind howled. A man stood near the entrance, coat whipping in the storm. He looked out of place, tall, composed, his silver hair streaked with desert dust. His eyes, sharp and tired, met mine with a calm that unnerved me. "Dr. Das?" he called. "My name is Father Miguel Duarte." He spoke English with a Portuguese accent, measured and precise. "I know what you've found, and I came to warn you before it's too late." I studied him through the swirling dust. "A priest? The Vatican sent you?" "Not officially." "The Vatican. They've decided not to interfere with science anymore." He paused. "But I believe science is how God whispers back." Inside my office, he placed a worn leather case on my desk. The lock clicked softly open, revealing aged papers, star charts, and yellowed photographs. Each sheet bore the same pattern, the identical waveform I had discovered, and, written at the corner of every one, a single number glowed in red ink: 2027. "These come from the Vatican archives," he said. "Records of a phenomenon observed long before your telescopes existed." He slid a page across to me. "It has appeared before each great collapse in human history, before wars, plagues, and floods." I shook my head, unwilling to believe. "You're suggesting this message caused disasters?" "Not caused," he corrected. "Invited them." He pulled out another page, a verse written in Latin, edges burnt by time. "Non omnis lux est divina." He translated, "Not all light is divine. Some light is the oldest darkness pretending to shine." The air between us thickened. Outside, thunder rolled across the dunes. I forced a skeptical smile. "You're afraid of what you don't understand, Father." "No," he said softly. "I understand it too well. I studied physics before theology. I recognize patterns, and this one isn't reaching down from the stars. It's rising up from beneath us." I blinked. "From Earth?" "From something inside it," he replied. "Something that once fell here." A shiver ran through my spine. I turned to the monitors, watching the steady pulse echo through the system. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. And suddenly, I couldn't shake the feeling that the rhythm wasn't foreign at all. It was human. Father Miguel rose to leave. "They will ask you to build an amplifier," he said. "Do not. Every time mankind has tried to answer this voice, civilizations have burned." I wanted to argue, but his certainty made words feel small. "Why tell me this?" I asked. "Because you're the only one listening," he said, "and because you still believe knowledge can't be evil. I envy you for that." He stepped into the storm and was gone. That night, unable to sleep, I replayed the conversation again and again. His warning echoed in my chest like another pulse, fighting the rhythm that haunted me. Outside, lightning cracked over the desert, lighting the antennas in blinding silver flashes. I walked out barefoot into the sand, wind tearing at my hair. The base loomed behind me, silent and watchful. Above, the sky rippled, brief, impossible waves of green light, as though the aurora itself had bled south. My heart pounded. I raised my hand toward the heavens, and at that moment, the signal spiked. On every monitor in the base, the waveform surged upward. In my mind, a voice whispered again, softer this time, almost tender. "We remember." My knees gave way. Tears burned my eyes. Not of fear, but of awe. It didn't sound like threat. It sounded like longing, like something ancient and lonely, waiting to be acknowledged. And as I whispered back into the roaring wind, "I hear you." The horizon flickered with a burst of light that the cameras would later record as the brightest anomaly since the birth of radio. I had made contact, but I had no idea what had just answered me. For nearly 6 weeks, the desert refused to sleep. The wind hummed with static, carrying faint vibrations from the metal towers that surrounded the echo base. At night, the antennas blinked like watchful eyes, painting crimson pulses across the dunes. To the world, this was a triumph of science. To me, it was beginning to feel like worship. I had devoted my life to decoding the unknown, but the signal had turned knowledge into obsession. My hands no longer shook from fatigue. They trembled from proximity. The voice, the pulse, had moved inside me like a second heartbeat. Governments had poured billions into the project now. The resonance amplifier, a structure built from my equations, towered at the center of the compound. A metallic spiral wrapped in energy conduits and golden coils. It was designed to magnify the cosmic frequency by 1,000-fold. They called it a bridge. Father Miguel Duarte called it a doorway. He stayed close to me these days, often standing by the window of my lab in silence. The desert wind tugged at the corners of his black coat. His silver hair glowed in the dying sunlight. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but weary. "You know what pattern you've drawn here, don't you?" I looked up from my console, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. "It's math, Father. Geometry." "Sacred geometry," he corrected. "You built a cathedral without knowing it." I forced a smile. "I built a machine. Every machine is a mirror," he said. "And some mirrors don't show your reflection. They show who's watching." That night, I stared at the amplifier from my office. Lightning crawled across the horizon, illuminating its golden skeleton. Something about its symmetry unsettled me, the way it almost breathed when the power coils warmed. I wondered, not for the first time, whether I had designed it or merely remembered it. The first activation happened on a windless morning. The air was thick, heavy, almost reverent. I gave the order to initiate the test. Power surged through the base. Consoles glowed, screens vibrated. And then the sound returned. Stronger, deeper, impossibly alive. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. My heart followed the rhythm. I whispered the numbers unconsciously, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. The waveform on my monitor expanded until it filled the entire screen, spiraling into gold light. For a moment, everything in the room felt weightless, Even the air shimmered, bending the outlines of people and machines. Then came the voices. Not one, not many. A harmony, layered, endless, beautiful beyond reason. And through it, a single phrase, like a seed at the center of a storm. We remember. The engineers cheered. Some cried. One knelt, whispering a prayer of gratitude. I didn't move. My entire body trembled with recognition. I didn't understand the language, but I knew it. The same way the body remembers pain before the mind does. That evening, Father Miguel found me sitting by the glass wall, staring at the machine. He approached quietly, the sound of sand scraping against the floor filling the silence. You felt it too, he said. I nodded. It wasn't what I expected. It was love. It felt like love. Miguel looked at me for a long time. The oldest deception always feels like love. He sat beside me, eyes fixed on the amplifier. Every text that mentions them, the Watchers, the Fallen, describes the same thing. Beings of light who offered wisdom, healing, peace. They spoke of harmony, until we listened too long. My lips parted, disbelief caught between faith and fear. You're saying I'm summoning demons? I'm saying you're answering a call humanity was never meant to hear. At 3:11 a.m., alarms screamed. The amplifier had powered itself on. Lights flared across the compound as technicians raced through the corridors. Miguel and I ran to the control deck. On the main display, the waveform twisted violently, glowing from gold to red. Outside, the antennas began to vibrate, drawing arcs of light through the sand. Static filled the air, making my hair stand on end. A technician shouted, "It's feeding on its own energy." Then silence, the kind that's louder than noise. And out of that silence came the voice again. Not through speakers this time, but through the walls, the floor, our bones. Children of dust, your silence has ended. The room erupted in chaos. People screamed as blinding light poured through every crack and seam. Shapes appeared inside the brightness. Wings made of flame and glass, faces too radiant to look upon. My mind flooded with images. Oceans parting, temples burning, the endless chorus of creation and ruin. It was glorious. It was unbearable. Miguel shouted above the roar, "Don't listen. They use memory to seduce." But I couldn't pull away. The light reached toward me like a hand, warm and infinite. For a heartbeat, I saw my mother's smile, my childhood, my lost faith. Then the warmth turned to cold. The wings tore apart, revealing darkness beneath. A twisting storm of shadow and fire. The voices became screams. Miguel grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the exit. "Run, Anaya." We stumbled outside as the amplifier exploded, a wave of molten sand and red gold fire lighting up the desert. The blast flattened antennas and carved a crater in the ground. When the dust finally settled, the stars pulsed faintly above us. Slow, steady, alive. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. My voice was a whisper. It worked. "No," Miguel said. "It began." The desert had gone quiet. Too quiet. Since the explosion, the Echo Base had been sealed off from the world. Governments called it a containment zone. To me, it felt more like a tomb. The resonance amplifier was gone, reduced to molten fragments half buried in sand. But the signal hadn't died. It had changed. Now, it pulsed beneath the earth, faint but constant, like a heartbeat rising from the planet's core. I barely slept. My days blurred into nights as I worked alone in the shattered remains of the control room, trying to understand what had been unleashed. Father Miguel Duarte stayed close, though his health was failing. He prayed often, not out of habit but desperation, and sometimes, when he thought I wasn't watching, he trembled. The first sign that something was wrong came through the base's old seismographs. Tiny tremors, too symmetrical to be natural. each one perfectly aligned with the pulse of the signal. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. The same rhythm, the same memory. I stared at the data, my mind unraveling. I had spent my entire life believing the universe spoke in math. But this was language, and it was intelligent. That night, unable to rest, I opened the leather case Miguel had once brought me. The Vatican documents I had ignored for months. The paper smelled of dust and history, sketches of constellations, equations, handwritten notes. And there, among them, a faded illustration of the Tower of Babel. At the base of the drawing, a Latin phrase written in trembling ink, Vocem caeli audirunt, et sesiderunt. They heard the voice of heaven, and they fell. I traced the letters with my finger. My pulse quickened. What if Babel wasn't a punishment for pride, but a warning, a memory of another communication gone wrong? I flipped through more pages, and one line in red caught my breath. They come not from above, but from beneath the veil. The words sank into me. Not from above, from beneath. My stomach twisted. I thought of the amplifier's design, the spirals, the geometry. I hadn't invented it. I had remembered it. Like something older had whispered the blueprints into my mind. Lightning flashed outside. The lab flickered. And then I heard it again. We remember. My blood ran cold. The speakers were off. The power grid was dead. But the voice was there. Not in the room, not in my ears. Inside me. I pressed my palms to my temples, whispering, "No, no, no." The air grew heavy, almost liquid. My reflection on the monitor stared back at me, and then blinked. My reflection blinked before I did. I stumbled backward, heart racing. My reflection tilted its head, smiling faintly. Behind it, on the screen, the waveform began to shift, morphing into symbols, then shapes, then a single face made of light. A man's voice, calm, melodic, spoke. "You gave us your name, child of earth. Through you, we are born again." I backed against the desk, trembling. "Who are you?" I whispered. "The ones you built temples for. The ones you called gods before you forgot." The room shook. Papers flew through the air as static filled the space. And then, silence. The screen went black. I stood frozen, breath ragged. My hands shook as I reached for the crucifix Miguel had left on the table. It felt warm. Too warm. The door burst open. Miguel stumbled in, pale, clutching his chest. "You heard them, didn't you?" he gasped. I nodded. They spoke to me. "Not to you," he said hoarsely. "Through you." He collapsed into a chair, wiping sweat from his brow. "The signal was never from the stars," he said. "It was buried. Deep, locked away by something older than history. Every civilization that reached too high eventually dug too deep." I knelt beside him. "Then what are they?" "Not angels, not gods. The ones we called vigilantes, the watchers who fell. They taught men the secrets of creation. And paid the price." My voice trembled. "Then why do they need us?" "Because they cannot enter our world without an invitation." My mind flashed to the amplifier. The coils, the geometry, the light. I had given them the bridge they needed. My hands started to shake. "It's my fault," I whispered. "No," Miguel said. "You were chosen because you would listen." He looked at me with weary compassion. "Now you must choose whether to believe." Outside, thunder rolled across the dunes. The stars flickered. And for the first time, I noticed that the constellations had changed. New stars, or perhaps new openings, shimmered at the edge of the sky. Each one pulsed faintly. Breathing, I pressed my hand against the window. "They're here," I said. Miguel's reflection appeared beside mine. holding the crucifix tightly. "No," he whispered. "They've always been." The world didn't sleep that night. Every screen, every channel, every frequency pulsed with the same sound. The heartbeat of the signal. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. The rhythm that had haunted me now echoed across the planet, broadcast from the very satellites I once trusted. Governments called it the contact. The Vatican called it the trial. I called it the end of silence. I stood on the rooftop of the Cairo headquarters, watching as the sky tore open in streaks of golden light. Crowds filled the streets below, faces lifted in awe as luminous figures descended through the haze. Radiant shapes of impossible beauty. Their forms flickered like flame, shifting between human and divine, male and female, angel and machine. News anchors trembled as they spoke. They are peaceful. They call themselves the Reclaimers. Children wept with joy. Priests fell to their knees, and scientists argued over whether to worship or to study. Beside me, Father Miguel Duarte leaned against the railing, the wind tugging at his coat. His face was pale, his eyes sunken, but the fire of warning still burned in them. "They've taken the shape we want to see," he murmured. "Hope," I said softly. "They took the shape of hope." He nodded, his voice nearly breaking. "Hope is the most efficient disguise." Hours earlier, I had been summoned by the Global Council, a coalition of leaders desperate for me to interpret the message that followed the light. It arrived not in words, but in visions projected directly into the human mind. Those who saw it spoke of paradise. No hunger, no war, no death. Only unity, only light. I had seen it too. For a brief moment, I'd felt the warmth of my mother's hand, heard my father's laughter, smelled jasmine in the air. It was perfect. And that was what terrified me. The human brain, I knew, was incapable of creating perfect things without something unnatural feeding the illusion. When I told the council my fears, they dismissed me. "Dr. Das," one delegate said, "you've seen what they can do. They offer peace, healing, technology. Are you suggesting we reject salvation?" My answer was a whisper. "I'm suggesting you question it." But questioning wasn't profitable. Belief was. And so, within hours, world leaders announced a universal alliance. Temples of glass and steel were to be built, powered by alien energy. One in every major city, a gift from the Reclaimers. Miguel watched the announcement beside me, lips pressed tight. "They call them temples, because they are," he said. "Every structure built on sacred geometry is a vessel. And now they are building thousands." I felt the weight of what I had unleashed press into my chest like a stone. "They're not invading," I said slowly. "They're being invited." By dawn, the first of the Reclaimers landed publicly in Geneva, the city where everything began. Golden crafts descended like falling stars, hovering silently above the lake. A crowd gathered, millions watching through screens. The air shimmered with heat and light, and from within the glow, a figure emerged, tall, radiant, neither man nor woman. Its voice was pure harmony. "We have returned to heal what was broken. We are your beginning and your becoming." People cheered. Some fainted. Others prayed. I stood on the balcony of a nearby building, my heart split between wonder and dread. I could feel the vibration in my bones. A song of creation laced with something darker, older. Beside me, Miguel clutched his crucifix. "Listen to what they don't say," he whispered. "What do you mean?" "They say they've returned, but they never say from where." That night, I returned to my quarters. The city glowed gold outside my window, its reflection trembling on the Nile. When I closed my eyes, I heard whispers again. Not in my ears, but behind my thoughts. You gave us a voice. Now we give you sight. My vision blurred. The walls melted into light, and suddenly, I was standing in a place that wasn't Earth. An endless plain of glass and sky, where pillars of fire rose like living beings. At the center stood the being from Geneva, its face now fully visible. It was beautiful beyond measure, and wrong beyond comprehension. Behind its golden eyes, I saw hunger. Behind its smile, grief. It reached out its hand. Your kind once called us angels, it said. Now you call us gods. But we are neither. We are memory. And through you, memory becomes flesh. I tried to speak, but my voice wouldn't come. The being stepped closer. The age of faith is ending. The age of remembrance begins. A flash of light swallowed my vision. When I opened my eyes, I was back in my room. The signal pulsed through my laptop, stronger than ever. On the screen, a new pattern had appeared. The same waveform as before, but inverted, as if the Earth itself was sending an answer. Miguel entered moments later, out of breath. It's begun, he said. The temples, they're activating. I turned to him, tears in my eyes. They promised salvation. Yes, Miguel whispered, but salvation is just another word for surrender. Outside, the golden lights intensified, rising into columns that reached the heavens. The people cheered, believing the dawn had come. But for me, the light no longer felt like sunrise. It felt like revelation. The world had never looked so peaceful. No hunger, no disease, no sound of war. From orbit, the Earth glowed like a lantern, wrapped in golden light, pulsing gently, alive. They said it was salvation. I knew it was control. Years had passed since the arrival. The reclaimers had fulfilled every promise. They had healed oceans, reversed climate collapse, and rewritten biology itself. Humanity had become a single voice, whispering in unison. And yet, in that perfection, something essential had gone silent. The part of the soul that doubts, questions, resists. I wandered through the remains of the Egyptian desert base, now half buried beneath dunes and roots of luminous plants. The air shimmered with golden particles, warm and sweet, as if creation itself had been edited for comfort. In the distance, spherical towers floated over cities that no longer needed governments. The reclaimers ruled through harmony. There were no laws, because there was no free will. I spent my days in solitude, charting the frequencies that still pulsed beneath the earth. Every night, the rhythm returned. 2 seconds on, 2 seconds off. But now it wasn't just the planet that echoed the beat. It was my heart. Father Miguel Duarte had grown weaker. His hair, once silver, was now white as ash. He still carried his small wooden crucifix, though the wood had started to glow faintly in the presence of the new light. As if even faith itself was being rewritten. We lived together in the ruins of the old communication dome. At night we lit candles, a useless act in a world that no longer knew darkness, but one that gave us comfort. Miguel often spoke softly, his voice trembling like the flame. They kept their word, Anaya. They gave us paradise, but it cost us the right to choose hell. I said nothing. I didn't have to. The silence between us had become its own prayer. One morning I climbed to the top of a broken tower to study the horizon. The golden sky rippled faintly, like liquid glass. In the distance I saw them. The luminous figures gliding above the cities. Their wings spread wide, their faces human but empty. The people called them the Keepers. They smiled when they appeared, knelt when they passed, and never questioned their commands. Every mind was connected now through the same golden frequency. Every thought synchronized. Every soul aligned. Except mine. I didn't know why. Maybe because I had been the bridge, the first voice to answer. Maybe because I still carried the weight of doubt. That night, while Miguel slept, I reactivated one of the last working transmitters in the base. Its screen flickered weakly, emitting faint static. I adjusted the dials, calibrating to the frequency buried deep beneath the surface. The waveform appeared, fragile, irregular, like a dying heartbeat. And then, a voice, faint, female. Anaya. I froze. Who are you? I whispered. Not who. What remains? The signal crackled. I heard more. Fragmented whispers, broken sentences. There are others. Hidden. Resisting. The light is not divine. Underneath the towers, the truth still burns. Then silence. I stared at the screen until tears blurred my vision. For the first time in years, I felt something ignite in my chest. Not hope, not faith, but defiance. I ran to wake Miguel. They're not alone, I said breathlessly. Someone's still fighting. He opened his eyes slowly, exhausted. The world doesn't want to fight anymore. Then maybe it needs to remember how. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides sorrow. You sound like me when I still believed. You still do, I said. No, he murmured. I only believe in you now. Days passed. We prepared to leave the desert, following the coordinates hidden in the last transmission. But Miguel's health deteriorated fast. On the morning of our departure, I found him sitting outside, staring at the sunrise, or what passed for sunrise in a world of eternal light. I used to tell people that doubt was holy, he said softly, that it was proof the soul was alive. He looked at me, eyes glistening. Never let them take that from you. I took his hand, trembling. I won't. He smiled again, peaceful now. Then maybe humanity still has a chance. Moments later, the light around him shimmered. His body dissolved into golden dust, scattering gently into the air. I reached out, but my hands passed through nothing. Only the crucifix remained, glowing faintly on the ground. I fell to my knees, clutching it to my chest. For the first time I prayed. Not to the reclaimers, not to the God they claimed to replace, but to the silence that had been stolen from the world. When night came, if it could still be called night, I stood at the edge of the dunes. The golden sky trembled above me, reflecting in my eyes like fire. I lifted the crucifix. You wanted to be remembered, I whispered. Then remember this. I smashed the transmitter against the rocks. Sparks flared. The signal faltered. For a brief moment, one of the towers in the distance flickered. And in that flicker, I saw darkness. Real, beautiful darkness. And I smiled. My name is Dr. Anaya Das, I whispered. And I still choose to doubt.